Hello and welcome to our reflection today as we continue looking at the Gospel of Mark. You might remember last time we thought about how Jesus wants us to be disciples. He doesn't just want a crowd of people following him. He doesn't just want spectators who've come along for a bit of entertainment on a Sunday afternoon. He wants people who are going to commit their lives to him, who are going to love him and be committed to him more than anything else in their lives. And we saw how the first disciples, they dropped their nets, they walked away from their old way of life, and they gave their all to following Christ. Now you might be thinking, well, why should I do that? Why should I give my life to following Jesus? What has he got that's special about him? Well, hopefully as we look to these verses, you might get an answer to that, because today we're seeing all about the authority of Jesus. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. Now, I've come to sit in the church today because when I come to teach in here, I don't teach on my own authority. My authority, if there is any really, is derived from the Bible. It's derived from God. I'm just wanting to present as best as I can what God has revealed to us in his word. It's not about what I have to say. It's not about my intelligence or my wisdom, because I haven't got a lot to add on that front. But when Jesus taught, he didn't teach in the same way that I taught. He taught as one who was speaking with authority. And the word authority means literally out of the original stuff. It's where we get the word author from. And so we're beginning to grasp that Jesus is not just another prophet, another teacher, another rabbi. He is the author. He is the one who teaches with authority, because he is the authority. He is the king over the whole of creation. But his kingship is not just limited to the spiritual realm, and that's really important for us to grasp. And as we read on, we read these words. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the house of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told Jesus about her. So he went with her, took her hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. This healing shows us that Jesus is not just a spiritual king over a spiritual kingdom and a spiritual realm, but he has authority over the physical world in which we live. And we're going to see that time and time again as we go through this gospel. Jesus has authority over the physical world in which we live. And that should encourage us. It should encourage us to follow him, to trust in him, to give our lives to him. But it should also encourage us, shouldn't it, to keep praying to him. Because Jesus has the power to make a difference, to change situations, to transform hearts and lives for his glory and for the sake of his kingdom. So I just want to encourage you today, Jesus is the one with authority. Give your all to him, commit your all to him, because he will lead you where you need to go. Now, if you want to carry on listening, I've been trying to keep these videos really, really short so that people will listen. And if you listen to me normally, you'll know that I struggle to keep things short. You know, I just want to keep preaching and keep talking. But if you want to carry on listening, I've got a story to finish with that Timothy Keller tells in this book, King's Cross, that we're following on, about following Jesus, about following threads. And it's a children's book story, actually, by George MacDonald, written about 150 years ago, called The Princess and the Goblin. There's a little 8-year-old girl called Irene, and she finds an attic room in her house. And when she goes there, she meets her fairy godmother. And when Irene goes to look for her, she's often not there. So one day, her grandmother gives her a ring with a thread tied to it. And it leads all the way to a little ball of thread. And she explains that she'll keep the ball. But I can't see it, says Irene. No, the thread is too fine for you to see it. You can only feel it. With the reassurance, Irene tests the thread. Now listen, says the grandmother, if you ever find yourself in any danger, you must take off your ring and put it under the pillow of your bed. Then you must lay your forefinger upon the thread and follow the thread wherever it leads you. Oh, how delightful, Irene says. It will lead to you, grandmother, I know. Yes, says the grandmother, but remember, it may seem to you a very roundabout way indeed, and you must not doubt the thread. Of one thing you may be sure, that while you hold it, I hold it too. A few days later, Irene is in bed and goblins get into the house. She hears them snarling in the hallway, but she has the presence of mind to take off her ring and put it under the pillow, and she begins to feel the thread, knowing that it's going to take her to her grandmother and to safety. But to her dismay, it takes her outside, and she realises that it's taking her right towards the cave of the goblins. Inside the cave, the thread leads her up a great heap of stones, and it seems like a dead end. The thought struck her that at least she could follow the thread backwards and thus get out. But the instant she tries to feel it backwards, it vanishes from her touch. The grandmother's thread only worked forwards, but forwards it led into a heap of stones. Irene burst into a wailing cry, but after she cries, she realises that the only way to follow the thread is to tear down the wall of stones. So she begins tearing it down, stone by stone, and though her fingers are soon bleeding, she pulls and pulls. Suddenly she hears a voice. It's her friend Curdie, who has been trapped in the goblin's cave. Curdie is astounded and asks, "Why, however, did you come here?" Suddenly, Irene replies that her grandmother sent her. And I think I found out why. After Irene has followed the thread and removed enough rocks to create an opening, Curdie starts to climb up out into the cave. But Irene keeps going deeper into the cave. Curdie objects. Where are you going there? That's not the way out. That's where I couldn't get out." "I know that," says Irene, "but this is the way my thread goes, and I must follow it." And indeed, the thread proves trustworthy because her grandmother is trustworthy. When Jesus told the disciples, "We're on the way, follow me," they had no idea where he was going. They thought he was going to lead them from strength to strength. They had no idea of what lay ahead, of the opposition that they would face, of the cross that was in view to Jesus. Imagine sitting down with a 7-year-old and saying to her, "I'd like you to write me an essay on what you think it's like to fall in love and be married." You know, when you read the essay, you know that it's going to be nothing like reality. A 7-year-old can't imagine what that will be like. When you start to follow Jesus, you're at least that far away. You have no idea how far you'll go. Jesus says, "Follow me, I'm going to take you on a journey, and I don't want you to turn to the left or to the right. I want you to put me first. I want you to keep trusting me, to stick with me." And that's what he wants each one of us to do. The author of The Princess and the Goblin put it like this in another story. He said, "The one secret of life and development is not to devise and plan, but to do every moment's duty aright, and let come not what will, for there is no such thing, but what the eternal thought wills for each of us, has intended in each of us from the first." In other words, we might not know where Jesus is going to take us when we follow him, but we have to trust him. He will lead us where we need to go, that we might become who he wants us to become.